was made flesh
and dwelt amongst us.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners.
Pray for us, O Holy Mother of God,
that we may be made worthy of the promises of Christ. Pour forth, we beseech you, O Lord, your grace into our hearts, that we, to whom the incarnation of Christ, your Son, was made known by the message of an angel, may by his passion and cross be brought to the glory of his resurrection, through the same Christ our Lord. Amen.
Kini ang simbiyanan sa RPN Radio Philippines Network DXKS DXKS 1080 ang inyong Radio Ronda 5,000 watts nagsimbiya sa ikatulong andana sa UFCO Lim Building, Borromeo Street, Dakbayan sa Surigao. RPN Radio Philippines Network DXKS 1080 ang inyong Radio Ronda.
All eyes and ears on a yearly gathering of the country's top leaders. A first for President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr., where he reports on the state of the country.
We live in difficult times, brought about by some forces of our own making, but certainly also by forces that are beyond our control.
Promises a way out of back-to-back crises.
We have assembled the best Filipino minds to help navigate us to this global crisis that we are now facing.
And lays down the administration's plans for the years to come.
Dapat natin balansehin ng maayos ang kalusugan at kapakanan ng ating mga mamamayan sa isang banda at ang ekonomiya.
This is the State of the Nation Address 2022.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this special edition of Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. I'm Rico Hizon. Just half an hour ago, President Bongbong Marcos delivered his first State of the Nation address. The red carpet was rolled out for the president and his family at the Batasang Pambansa in Quezon City, as well as for over 1,300 guests, including members of the 19th Congress, former top officials, cabinet members, justices, and the diplomatic corps. This was the first full in-person SONA in 2 years. In just a moment, our chief correspondent and anchor, Pion Tiveros, will be joining us live from the House of Representatives for the highlights of the president's speech. Throughout the show, we'll be bringing you the latest on the ground with our correspondents, Rex Remitio, Cian Arcangel, and Amor Santos, covering today's big event at the Batasan. George Cahiles, David Santos, and Anjo Limario reporting on protest actions. And Paige Javier and Caroline Bonquin on other top stories. Let's now head to the Batasang Pambansa, where we're joined by my colleague, Pion Tiveros. Pia, what was the crux of the State of the Nation address of President Marcos Jr.?
Hi, Rico. I'll get to that in a bit. But first, I wanted to go through this very quickly. If the forces that unseated his father in 1986 and campaigned against him very vigorously in the last election couldn't believe the day that was the night of May 25 that he was proclaimed by a joint session of Congress as the winner of the presidential elections in this very same building. And also, if they couldn't believe the day that he took his oath as the 17th president of the Philippines at the National Museum. That was June 30th. They most probably cannot believe that this day has come either, that a new President Marcos delivered a State of the Nation address in the building his father built to house the interim and regular Buwatasang Pambansa that was meant to replace a Congress that was padlocked and dissolved by martial law by the elder Marcos. But that is exactly what happened today. Ferdinand Romualdez Marcos Jr., Bongbong Marcos, delivered his first State of the Nation address. The younger Marcos given 2 standing ovations. First, when he said he would build specialty hospitals in all regions, and when he said he would never abandon a single or a square inch of territory, because he said we are a friend to all and an enemy to none. Applauded around 70 times in a 1 hour and 19-minute speech, which he started off by saying we will find solutions, and these are some of them. He began with a plan for economic recovery to mitigate the efforts of the pandemic, and he said to contain future shocks. Very quickly, he went through the economy, agriculture, agrarian reform. He talked about condoning loans, payments for land acquisition, tourism, the creative industry, talking about the creative industry, DSWD, helping the poor, education. He said it's time for kids to go back to face-to-face classes, connectivity, health. He said no more lockdowns and let's roll out that booster shot program right away. English as the medium for instruction, he said, because that is our advantage compared to the rest of the world. Technology, connectivity, infrastructure. He said all these infrastructure projects that the Duterte administration began, he said, and quote, we quote, full speed ahead. Those were his instructions to the Department of Public Works and Highways. Build, build, build. Energy. He talked about renewable energy, nuclear power even, going to that, down that road, nuclear power. He talked about disaster-proof planning, fresh water supply, migrant workers and their challenges. He also did come out with a list of proposed legislation. There were about 20 of them. Among the more notable ones was this proposal to bring back Reserve Officer Training Corps, or ROTC, for grade 11 and 12 in the National Service Act. He talked about amendments to EPIRA, amendments to the BOT law, and many other different proposed legislation. He did end with saying that we will endure. Our Filipino spirit remains undimmed, and the state of the nation is sound, he said. And he ended at around 4:19 in the afternoon. Now, very quickly, we just want to remind people that this is a new president coming off an election. 55.5 million Filipinos voted in that election, and of that 55.5 million, Bongbong Marcos got 60% of that number, or 31.6 million votes, the third biggest mandate in Philippine electoral history. That 55.5 million who voted, by the way, that represents an 83% turnout of the 67.4 million registered voters. Now, that 60% of the 60%, no, that went to BBM, that is reflected in all these pre-election surveys. Of course, that was several months back. Pulse Asia saying in January, putting BBM at 60%. In February, putting him at 55%. The Lilo survey in April, putting him at 64%. So this is the first SONA of for this president, for President Bongbong Marcos, coming off an election, coming off an inaugural, and coming off of, well, an election that was very hotly contested, if you will. Rico?
Thank you so much, Pia, for joining us at the Batasang Pambansa. Pia Ontiveros will be back later on Newsnight with more details on the first State of the Nation address of President Bongbong Marcos. And as the president takes the helm of a country deep in crisis, what did he say about key measures to help revive the economy? Let's listen to this.
In terms of the economy, we will implement a sound fiscal management. Tax administration reforms will be in place to increase revenue collection. Expenditure priorities will be realigned and spending efficiency will be improved to immediately address the economic scarring arising from the effects of COVID-19 and also to prepare for future shocks. Productivity-enhancing investments will be promoted. Our country must become an investment destination, capitalizing on the corporate recovery and tax incentives for enterprises through the CREATE law and the economic liberalization laws such as the Public Service Act and the Foreign Investments Act. Ecozones will be fully supported to bring in strategic industries such as those engaged in high-tech manufacturing, health and medical care, and all emerging technologies. This is also seen to facilitate economic growth outside of Metro Manila.
President Marcos hopes to grow the economy by up to 7.5% this year. Are President Marcos's plans enough to arrest the rising prices and lead the economy towards recovery? We now go above and beyond the headlines with former Financial Executives Institute of the Philippines President Francis Lim. Francis, thank you so much for joining us. Your reaction to President Marcos Jr. first SONA in terms of economic reforms, job creation, and turning this economy around, which has been challenged by the two-year health crisis and now rising consumer prices?
Well, I thought that it was a very good roadmap for his presidency.
Mm-hmm.
The country coming from the scars of the pandemic. And I think it shows his political will,
mm-hmm.
and the fact that he is surrounded by good economic managers, and as shown by his appointments.
Francis, which specific features of the economic reform package did impact you the most?
Generally, everything, because it's just a continuation of the gains of the Duterte administration. He spoke about the CREATE Act, he spoke about the amendments to the Public Service Act, and he spoke generally on making the Philippines an investment destination. Investments are what we need in order to help us recover from the pandemic. Investments are what we need in order to make our country competitive. Investments are what we need in order to give our employment to our brother Filipinos and sisters, Filipino sisters and brothers. Investments are what we need for making this country compete with the rest of the neighbors. No? And at the end of the day, what we in the business sector would like to see is a competitive Philippines. And all those ingredients is clearly spelled out. Some of them are very courageous. And it just shows that he has a roadmap, no, that will make him succeed. No? And I think, of course, the challenge is
how realistic?
Execution.
Francis, how realistic, though, is this economic agenda of Bongbong Marcos? Can it be attained over the next 3 to 6 years?
I think it can be attained within not within that next 3 years, but within his presidency if he is consistent in the execution. Of course, the devil will be in the details, but time will show how determined. Time will show his political will. No, as these laws, for example, as these regional specialized hospitals and so on and so forth, will take place. No? It
but
remains to be seen. But
aren't these promises too ambitious, Francis? Because you need a lot of money to be able to finance these projects.
It's ambitious, no? But he talked about revenue generation, good fiscal management. He talked about efficiency in spending. The Duterte administration, for all its faults, have shown that if there is political will, especially in terms of putting in place the laws that are needed to spur investments, to spur economic activity, it can be done.
He also talked about implementing taxes for the digital economy. This has been discussed over the past couple of weeks. Why didn't he touch on taxing single-use plastics?
That's one thing I wanted to hear, no? But anyway, in fact, I think that this digital economy is a rich source for taxation, for revenue generation. And that's why I was happy because, digital taxation is itself controversial. No? Some say that it might discourage the Philippines from leveraging on the digital economy if it tax the players. No? But I think this is one good revenue course from a taxation point of view.
Okay. Francis, we have about 30 seconds left before the end of our interview. There were several key issues that he did not touch on. What do you think will be the reaction of the business community towards these issues? He did not touch on corruption. He did not talk about fighting drugs. And he did not even look into the possibility of changing the form of government to federalism. Do you think that these were important issues that he should have really excluded from his State of the Nation address?
Well, it goes without saying that corruption and rule of law are very important. And if I read this mind correctly, I think that perhaps his advisors said that no need to mention them because it was mentioned time and again, but to no success. But underpinning all this economic agenda that he has, all this policy, is the rule of law and corruption. That's why, and when he said about efficient government spending, that a big part of that is to avoid corruption. So he did not say so, but I'm hoping that that will be a big factor when he talks about efficiency in administering or spending government resources. Because if a big part of government resources, government money goes to corruption, then there goes his plan.
All right. From the vantage point of a businessman.
It did not be mentioned.
From the vantage point of a businessman and former Phoenix president, how would you rate President Bongbong Marcos's first SONA from a scale of 1 to 10, 1 the lowest, 10 the highest?
I would rate it as 8.5.
Thank you so much
8.5
for your insights on President Marcos's first SONA speech, former Phoenix President Francis Lim. And when we come back on Newsnight, we give you the latest from the newly convened 19th Congress with Senate President Mig Zubiri and House Speaker Martin Romualdez now at the forefront. Keep it right here on CNN Philippines. News you can trust.
Saldariaga po.
At may tabasa David.
Good news! Ngayong July, decrease po tayo. Halos 71 centavos ang bawas. Kaya 9 pesos and 75 centavos per kilowatt hour ang overall electricity rate. Dahil ito sa refund na alinsunod sa ERC. Katumbas ito ng 141 pesos na bawas sa bill ng karaniwang bahay.
Updated ba kayo sa presyo ng gas at mga bilihin? Dapat ganun din sa mga energy efficiency tips. Kung kaya, iwas muna tayo sa gas. Let's go electric. Mas tipid. Makikita ang mga tips na to sa Meralco mobile app na nag-update ng look. Mas magaan sa mata. Kaya easier na din ang pag-manage ng account. Pwede rin si Meralco mismo ang mag-update sa'yo. Just update your contact details through these channels.
Hanggang sa susunod na
Meralco Advisory.
It can be dangerous out there. Buti na lang there's locally super fruits with 3 kinds of fruits that are super in many ways. First, there's our dragon fruit drink na mayaman sa prebiotics that aid digestion. Second, there's our passion fruit drink with no added sugar and high in vitamin C. Lastly, we have our mangosteen drink, good for your heart. All superfruits contain more antioxidants than your average fruit to help protect your immune system. Superfruit for super you.
Fried chicken? Timplang happy.
With easy-to-cook Magnolia Chicken Templados. Iba't ibang sarap ng chicken, kaya. Anong Magnolia Chicken Templados mo? Iba't ibang easy chicken sarap.
Now it's time to live the life. Let's have sun make life with the sun out. Any hour is now happy hour. Ang katapusan ng bawat kwento, may inuumpisa ang bago. Get into the life.
Sun make light. Ipahid mo ito, digibay yan. Bostik Epoxy! Bostik Epoxy! El General! El Capitan! El Supremo! Samahan ng mga palaban. El General, ito'y matibay. El Capitan, ito'y makapit. El Supremo, ito'y matatag. Bostik Epoxy, palaban!
Magkakasubukan na naman tayo
Binabayo na po ng bagyong Ulysses ang malaking bahagi ng
Mas
Luzon.
marami pang lugar ang posibleng maapektuhan ng El Nino.
Naitala sa Dagupan City noong Sabado
ang pinakamataas na heat index. Mo kaming subukan. Matinding init man yan, umalakas na bagyo. Hindi mo kayang Vulcasil ko. Vulcasil. Para sa akin, ito ang tibay subok ng panahon.
Welcome back to Newsnight. Hours before President Marcos delivered his first State of the Nation address, thousands of protesters marched to Commonwealth Avenue to demand relief for Filipinos. They call for an end to human rights violations, tracing back to the term of the president's father and late dictator Ferdinand Marcos Sr. George Cahiles has a story.
The protest here at Commonwealth Avenue pushed through with thousands of activists not minding the changing weather. Amid the crisis, protesters are calling for economic relief in the form of government financial aid to vulnerable sectors and the suspension of taxes on oil. They're also calling for job security and minimum wage increase. Activist groups also laid down a 9-point People's Agenda for Change, which include reviving the agriculture industry and prioritizing food production, prioritizing pro-people economic development through land reform and national industrialization, adopting a clear government policy to fight disinformation, to protect freedom of expression and press freedom, instituting a democratic, ethical, and accountable governance, and providing free healthcare and basic social services for the people.
Kung pagbabatayan natin ang kanyang inaugural speech, ang kanyang appointment sa cabinet, yung 3 weeks na siya ay presidente, wala tayong inaasahang makabuluhan na gagawin niya para magkaroon ng tunay na pagbabago. Hanggang ngayon, wala pa rin tayong Department of Health Secretary. Ang kanyang economic policies represent continuity of the tried and tested anti-people, anti-poor, anti-worker programs. Kaya itong ating SAM na People's Agenda, yan po ay hinaharap natin sa publiko para tao mismo ang kikilos para ipaglaban ito.
Protesters peacefully ended their program around 12:30 in the afternoon. George Cahiles, CNN Philippines.
Government supporters also gathered for President Marcos Jr.'s SONA. They're holding a concert rally on a portion of the IBP Road in Batasan Hills, Quezon City. Senior correspondent David Santos joins us now live. David, what is the situation there where you are right now?
Well, Rico, let me first tell you about the reaction of the people here with regard to the president. The more than hour-long speech of the president through a number of cheers from his supporters just gathered outside Batasang Pambansa for an interview here on ICT Road that you mentioned. Now, among the many issues raised by the president, his pronouncement reiterating his administration's policy against the reinstatement of pandemic lockdowns probably drew among the loudest cheers. Well, that's perfectly understandable since most of the president's supporters that gathered here belong to the classes the C and E. They were among those most affected or significantly affected by the government's imposed lockdowns for the past 2 years. Now, the other issues that drew reactions from the crowd included the president mentioning about government assistance to single parents, as well as the return to face-to-face classes. Police Lieutenant Colonel Elizabeth Hassi of the Quezon City Police placed the crowd estimate here at IDP Road at around 4,000. As of 4 in the afternoon, she could not say at the time if the crowd had picked by 4 p.m. The presence of members of the presidential security group here has stoked speculations that the President Bongbong Marcos might drop by and address his supporters. However, Vice President Sara Duterte did drop by several minutes ago. She gave about a 2-minute speech, basically thanking their supporters, their support for them during the elections, as well as for their support for this current administration. She also encouraged their supporters to continue, show their support to this administration with all the policies outlined by President Marcos in his speech today. Now, Puerto Rico, there is no word yet if President Marcos will make an appearance in this concert initiated to show support for him. By the way, this concert is still ongoing as we speak. Rico.
David, thank you so much for that update. David Santos reporting. Before President Marcos delivered his State of the Nation address, the 19th Congress opened its first regular session. The Senate and the House of Representatives began their sessions earlier this morning with the lawmakers approving concurrent resolutions stating they would hear the presidential address. Lawmakers also formally elected their leaders, with Senator Mig Zubiri taking the role of Senate President and Representative Martin Romualdez, the President's cousin, becoming House Speaker. A Senate supermajority, a 2-member minority bloc, and 2 siblings choosing to become independent. Amor Santos gives us a rundown of the new Senate leadership.
It's official. Mig Zubiri is the new Senate President. 20 out of 24 senators voted for him. They called him Trabajador ng Senado, or Worker of the Senate, praising him for his work in Congress for the past 2 decades.
This Senate, under my leadership, however, will be one to solve problems more than it would find faults. While probes are magnets for publicity, it is the policies, laws patiently written line by line away from the limelight that drives progress.
Meanwhile, most senior member Loren Legarda is Senate President pro tempore. Joel Villanueva is Majority Leader. The minority bloc has 2 members. Senator Risa Ontiveros announced that Senator Coco Pimentel is Minority Leader.
I accept the challenge, and I thank Senator Ontiveros for the nomination.
Sibling Senators Alan and Pia Cayetano declared themselves as independent.
My sister and I can be a bridge dito sa Senado between a majority bloc that is very, very supportive sa administrasyon and a small minority bloc which is also very, very critical of the administration.
Even if it's a small minority, what is important is that we in the Senate, we will decide to act if it is for the good of the people. We put our foot down also when it is measures that we feel that are, of course, will not benefit our countrymen.
Meanwhile, Senator Amy Marcos believes it's time for her brother, President Bongbong Marcos, to show his contempt against corrupt officials and criminals.
Sabihin ko totoo?
Yes.
Okay, bilang super ate, gusto ko magalit na si Bongbong. Gusto ko magwala na siya, pangalanan na lahat ng mga agricultural smuggler na nakakasira ng ating pagsasakan lokal. Sana takutin na niya at kasuhan lahat ng mga nasa gobyerno na kilalang-kilalang korap sa BOC, BIR at sa iba pang ahensya. Sana magalit na siya at tunay na sabihin na dadamputin na yung mga kriminal at mga nangangalakal pa rin ng droga.
Marcos was offered 4 committee chairmanships, but she wants to prioritize foreign relations and electoral reforms. Committee chairpersons will be elected in the coming days. Amor Santos, CNN Philippines.
And now let's cross over to the Batasang Pambansa, and we're joined by my colleague, Pia Ontiveros, who will now be speaking to the director of the State of the Nation Address, President Bongbong Marcos. Pia, over to you.
Thanks, Rico. Like you said, the director of President Marcos is Direct Paul Soriano, very well known in the industry also. Hi, Direct Paul. Thank you very much for agreeing to this interview. Let's talk about the different shots. I've been covering the sauna since the 1990s, and this is the first time that I saw certain shots like that. No, they tried a few in the last few years with President Duterte, but this is the first time. For example, nung naglalakad si BBM papasok ng plenary hall, that back shot, the tracking shot from the back, the shot from behind him while he's at the rostrum, the shot from the ceiling. Tell us all about that.
Yes, I mean,
sorry, you have your mic.
Yes, if there was really something that I could do and be cinematic about, was his walk to the rostrum, no? Because that's basically just coverage, right? So what I wanted to do was something at least cinematic, visual, pleasing to the eye. So when I was talking to the president at the palace during a rehearsal, I told him, when you enter the plenary, there'll be a camera that will automatically go behind you. Just keep walking, because I want to get the shot of the Philippine flag and I want to get you walking into the plenary. And I told him, please stop at the top of that ramp, because I want to do a 360 shot around you. And he did everything. Imagine with a sauna speech and everything, he remembered those instructions. And yeah, and we pulled it off. We were able to get it. And of course, the other 2 shots that I'm happy to say we executed was the one behind him, right? There was a camera right behind the president, so we got to see his kind of point of view. And I used this contraption. So I used this contraption.
Let's show this on camera, huh?
So it was, I put it right here, and then this was the camera was inside here, diba? So yeah, it's pretty.
Can we show it now? No, it's not yet on air.
Okay, no problem, no problem. But
can we show this?
So there was
may delay. Okay, so eto. Okay, Paul, dito yung camera.
So the camera was in here, and then it was right behind the president. So we had that shot there. Now you could see kind of the plenary and of course him.
Okay.
So that's the.
And you brought it with you because it's now it is a memento. So go ahead, show us what's on it.
It's memorabilia now for me. I got the president to sign it, and he said one of Direct Paul's clever, awesome tricks. Congratulations, Mr. President's signature. So that's, I guess, a job well done. And of course, I got Senate President Zubiri, and I got, of course, Speaker Martin Romualdez. So something I can,
Kompleto na araw mo.
Kompleto na. And then the other shot I did was the top shot.
Right.
Which I kind of symbolized the shot about his father kind of looking down at his son. It was kind of get that bird's eye, heaven's eye view.
Okay, well, maraming matutuwa na sa ganong shots, especially, I mean, well, those who voted for him and those who like him, but of course, like there's quite a lot of people who, still in election mode.
And I hope.
What are your thoughts about that?
And I hope, and I listen to the sauna, and it's impossible for everybody to not agree with it. There should be some portions of his speech that whether you voted for him, that you can agree with, and maybe that's what you need to do, because it takes more than 31 million to make this country great. And we hope, we give the president a chance. The other people that didn't vote for him or technically not supporting that, didn't give him a chance, because if we do, we're going to benefit from all of that. And I really hope that, and I know he'll perform. I really believe in him, and hopefully we can all listen to what he said and execute.
Well, in his inaugural speech, he never mentioned the 31.6 million who voted for him. He talked about the 110 million, referring to the population. He said 110 million reasons to be confident. Tonight, today, there was no mention either of the votes he got in the elections. So it's really a moving forward kind of speech.
It's because, like I said, I know him personally, and his heart is for every Filipino, not for just those who support or voted for him. He loves everyone, and he really wants to do a great job, and he really wants to give everyone a better country. And I know that, and I believe he will. And for those that don't believe in him yet, I hope he'll turn them into believers eventually. He has 6 years, so...
Okay. Oh, one more thing. I noticed that, and again, like I was saying, I've been covering the sauna since the 1990s, so may backlight, no? Yung rostrum, sa likod niya. So it was lighted up. Usually, it's a flat you can see the grain of the wood, no, behind the president, whoever is the chief executive delivering a sauna. This time around, may ilaw sa likod.
Yeah, well, I work closely with my longtime cinematographer, Audie Flores. So he gave it.
Audie Flores.
He's actually right here.
Right here.
He gave it that depth.
Friend of mine also.
Yeah, he's I've worked with him for almost 10, 12 years, and when we were lighting the plenary, there's only so much you can do,
Right.
But, there was
very
one
limited.
thing, there was one thing we wanted to do. Is we wanted to make sure there was some depth and some separation between the president and the rostrum.
Right.
Just to give it more of that cinematic feel, and I'm glad look at it. It looks great.
Yeah. Looked much better than previous saunas. Anything else you can add that you tried to do to make this one a little bit different?
Well, besides, of course, the opening, I don't know if people got to witness, but before we closed the broadcast, we showed a photo of him and his father. Father and son kind of look at each other. And, maybe that kind of adds a little touch to his first sauna. But again, for me, I hope everyone is able to listen, not just those who support him, but those who don't. And hopefully this sauna gives them hope. And if they can just find something in his speech that they can agree with and execute that, then I think we can be a better country.
All right. Thanks so much for being with us tonight on Newsnight. Direct Paul Soriano. Maraming salamat. Let's head on over back to the studio. Rico?
Thank you so much, Pio Ontiveros, joining us live from the Batasang Pambansa with Direct Paul Soriano. And up next on this special edition of Newsnight, we'll be bringing you up-to-dates on the events at the Batasang Pambansa, plus the cap of former Lamitan Basilan Mayor Rose Furagay denies her supposed involvement in the drug trade. Keep it right here on CNN Philippines. News you can trust.
Listo at ganado siyang kumain. Happy and healthy siya sa Nutri-Chunks. Recommended by my vet. Nutri-Chunks is the only one with active boost and prebiotics na pampalisto. Made with real meat and fortified pa with essential nutrients that help keep him strong, healthy, and happy. Listo ganado sa Nutri-Chunks.
Red Horse Beer. Ito ang tama. Sarap ulitin ng lakas ng tama pero di wasak.
For us to be able to move forward, infrastructure development should be a focus of any economic development program in the country in the next few years.
The objective is to improve transportation, mobility, and accessibility in our cities by seamlessly connecting or linking up all our road and rail networks, airports, and seaports. With this, we can decongest Metro Manila, accelerate and make more efficient the transportation of people and goods, improve access between cities and provinces, develop new economic growth centers, boost our local industries, enable tourism, create more jobs and business and livelihood opportunities, and allow everyone to have a better quality of life.
Welcome back. You're watching a special edition of Newsnight on the first State of the Nation address of President Bongbong Marcos. I'm Rico Hizon. It was more than an hour speech from the President. He delivered his first State of the Nation address at the Batasan Pambansa in Quezon City, highlighting his economic and health agenda and priority bills. President Marcos recognizes the Philippines as one of the most vulnerable countries to the effects of climate change. In an interview with Chief Correspondent Pion Tiveros, Environment Chief Tony Loizaga said awareness and education on the impact of climate change are crucial in coming up with solutions to address the problem.
The impacts of climate change are first felt in our ecosystems as well as our communities. And so we need to understand better how these impacts actually will affect our inclusive and resilient development plan, the Philippines. And so what we need to do at this point is account for our resources, be very fastidious about trying to understand systems, the interaction between the human and the environmental systems, but also, in fact, the technological systems that can assist us in mitigating and adapting to climate change. The way we need to think about risk to disasters, actually, is to think about our exposure, the kinds of exposure, and the vulnerabilities of whatever is exposed. So whether that's technological systems, whether that's human communities, whether that's our ecosystems, natural ecosystems, those all need to be understood in the ways that we need to frame our risk. And now at least we understand, given the recent disasters and the learning from other countries as well, that the risk is systemic, it's complex, and it's dynamic. So we need to continuously assess the way we are exposed and vulnerable.
And it was Pion Tiveros speaking with Environment Secretary Tony Loizaga. Before President Marcos delivered his State of the Nation address, the 19th Congress opened its first regular session. Lawmakers elected their leaders, with Senator Mig Zubiri taking the role of Senate President and Martin Romualdez, the President's cousin, becoming House Speaker. Sian Arcangel joins us now live from the Batasan for more on the House leadership and other updates. Sian.
Rico, the voting for the new House Speaker took over 2 hours as each one of the over 300 lawmakers took to the rostrum to formally register their vote. The winner of the speakership race is none other than Leyte Congressman Martin Romualdez, the cousin of President Bongbong Marcos. He is the lone contender for the speakership, and he was nominated by his nephew, Ilocos Norte Congressman Sandro Marcos, who is also the president's son. Sandro says his uncle was qualified to lead the House after holding leadership posts in the chamber for over a decade. Romualdez's nomination was supported by representatives from major political parties. No other lawmaker was nominated for Speaker. Romualdez vowed to be fair to his colleagues regardless of their political affiliations. He said his office will always be open to all lawmakers. Former President and now Pampanga Representative Gloria Macapagal Arroyo was elected Senior Deputy Speaker after the election for Speaker. She and Romualdez are both leaders of Lakas CMD, which is also the Vice President Sara Duterte's party. Meanwhile, 5 lawmakers who seconded Romualdez's nomination were elected as deputy speakers. These are Davao City Congressman Isidro Ungab, Antipolo Representative Roberto Puno, Las Piñas Representative Camille Villar, Ilocos Sur Congresswoman Christine Singson Nihan, and TUCP Party List Representative Raymond Democrito Mendoza. Zamboanga City Representative Manix Dalipe was elected House Majority Leader, while National Unity Party stalwart Reginald Velasco was named Secretary General of the Chamber. Rico, in the coming days, it is expected that more leadership posts in the House will be filled, including possibly the post of the Minority Leader, which will be elected by the members of the Minority Bloc who did not vote for Romualdez and abstained from the voting. Announcements regarding the committee chairmanships are also expected to be announced. Rico?
Martin Romualdez is officially the new Speaker of the House. Sian Arcangel, thank you so much for that update live from the Batasan Pambansa. Well, attendees, especially ally lawmakers, are all praises for Mr. Marcos's SONA. Progressive groups are not impressed, saying the president left out key issues affecting ordinary Filipinos. Anjo Limario joins us now from Quezon City for the details. So, Anjo, how did the progressive groups react to the first SONA of President Marcos Jr.?
Disgusted, Rico, that summarizes how progressive groups feel after watching the entire speech of President Marcos detailing his plans for the country. They did point out the president failed to discuss important issues such as increasing workers' wages, ending contractualization, distributing land to farmers, and junking of rice tariffication law. They actually held a public viewing here at the KMU National Office in Quezon City to engage the crowd attended by groups from different sectors. They flashed signages, yes, if they favor the statement, boo if they are against it, and we if they don't believe it. Among issues that earned boost from them when Marcos mentioned taxes, especially when it comes to compliance, they can't help but reply, magbayad ka muna ng taxes mo, pay your taxes. Of course, we know there is a standing order from the Supreme Court ordering the Marcos family to pay their estate taxes amounting to billions of pesos. They also booed when the president says he'll continue and expand the Duterte administration's infra programs. They also oppose the revival of nuclear power, right-sizing of government offices, and reinstitution of mandatory ROTC. They raised the "we" signage when the president talked about inflation and target economic growth, and when he calls Vice President Sara Duterte as highly able education secretary. They also question his pronouncement on defending the country's territory. They shout, "Gawin mo, di pwedeng salita lang." But it's not all negative, to be fair, Rico. They did approve of his plan to bring healthcare system to the communities and address the concerns of health workers.
We are hoping that he would not be another Marcos Sr. We were hoping that he would not be another Duterte. But as it is, it seems the same programs are being manifested by the same government of Bongbong Marcos Jr. And we cannot agree with this kind of program. It is against the interest of the Filipino people. It is against the interest of the Filipino workers.
Well, as for KMU Chair Elmer Labog, they will stand their ground, they will mobilize their people inside Congress and in the streets, and the fight continues. Meantime, Rico, protesters who have earlier assembled along Commonwealth Avenue at the St. Peter Chapel have peacefully dispersed around 12:30 p.m., according to police authorities. Back to you.
Sentiments of the progressive group are mixed. Thank you so much for that update. Anjo Limario reporting. Moving now to other headlines, the gunman in yesterday's assassination at the Ateneo de Manila University is set to face more charges from the family of his target victim, the former mayor of Lamitan City, Basilan. Paige Javier has this update.
The family of slain former Lamitan Basilan Mayor Rose Furigay is determined to put her killer behind bars for good. Furigay's family is filing multiple murder and frustrated murder charges against Dr. Chow Tiao Yumol. Lawyer Quirino Esguerra says Yumol has 8 pending arrest warrants and had been in hiding since 2021.
Very clear naman sa nakita ninyo na pinlano niya ito. At saka kinukondem ng pamilya to the highest point ang ginawa nito.
The Furigays will also pursue the over 70 cyber libel cases against the suspect. Esguerra says the feud between the Furigays and Yumol goes as far back as 2018. Then Lamitan Mayor Rose Furigay closed down his infirmary clinic for operating without a permit. Esguerra also belied Yumol's claims that the Furigays are involved in the illegal drug trade.
Walang katotohanan niyang pinagsasabi ng gunman na yan. Kaya hindi pinatulan ang mga accusation niya dahil puro lang yun paninira.
The PDEA refused to comment on the claims of Yumol. In 2019, Yumol reached out to the Presidential Anti-Corruption Commission to investigate the Furigays. He lamented what he called the lack of action on his complaint. Former PACC Chairman Greco Belhica denies this, saying they referred his case to proper authorities who can investigate and file charges.
Nasampahan po ng DILG ng kaso ang kanya pong mga kalaban sa Office of the Ombudsman. So ibig pong sabihin, hanggang ngayon, hinihir na po at pending ang kanyang case. Issue niya po sa drugs ay nando na rin po sa PDEA at sa mga pulis.
Belhica says some of the evidence presented by Yumol were old photos and did not support his claims. He then urged the Marcos administration to give more support to the justice system.
Panawagan sa ating gobyerno palakasin po ninyo ang ating justice system. Sa Kongreso, give budget to the courts and to the ombudsman.
The League of Provinces and League of Cities of the Philippines condemned the fatal shooting. The LPP calls for a swift investigation to make sure justice is served, while the LCP vows to fight criminality in the cities. The Ateneo de Manila University says it is reviewing its security protocols. Paige Javier, CNN Philippines.
Apart from Furigay, other victims who were killed during the shooting were her executive assistant, Victor Capistrano, and Ateneo security guard, Genevieve Bendiala. Well, you can count on CNN Philippines for the latest on the first State of the Nation address of President Bongbong Marcos. Keep it right here on Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement. Gama sa Davao, para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement. Ato ni Bay.
Protektahi ang imong mga mata batok sa delikado ug makadaot nga ultraviolet nga silaw sa adlaw ug uban pa. Pinaagi sa pagsulob og eksakto nga prescription sa antiyohos o antipara. Likay ang mga simptomas sama sa hanap nga pananaw sa layo o duol nga basahon, sakit sa ulo ug uban pa nga makaapekto sa atong kahimsog nga ang hinungdan depekto sa atong mga mata. Alang sa kumpleto nga primary eye care, contact lenses, fashion eyewear, computer eyeglasses, sunglasses, accessories ug uban pa, adto kita sa AG Buñuel Optical Clinic. Ang AG Buñuel Optical Clinic nagpahinumdum kanato nga ang kahimsog sa atong mga mata usa ka prioridad nga angay ipa-check up kausa matag tuig aron pagsiguro nga luwas kita sa piligrong mga sakit. Pinaagi sa lisensyado o qualified optometrists nga maoy mo prescribe sa eksaktong kagamitan o kung primary eye care ang paghisgutan. Duaw lang silang buhatan sa 3636 sa Nicolas Street, Surigao City ug adunay ilang extension office sa Aurelianida Street, Cantilan, Surigao del Sur. Ayaw kalimti higala, AG Buñuel Optical Clinic.
Ang AG Buñuel Optical Clinic doon na branch dito sa lungsod sa Dapa sa may Lupis Haina Street, Poblasyon Dapa, Surigao del Norte.
Ang AG Buñuel Optical Clinic dinhi sa syudad ng Surigao. No transfer na sa bagong location sa Nicolas Street Ragyahapon, tapad sa Garcia Hotel at bang sa Unicity.
Afternoon to hear the President's plans for the country. Melissa Lopez is on the ground in Marikina City. So what has been the feedback to the first SONA of the President?
Rico, we spent the afternoon in a bustling salon in Marikina and the area quieted down just before the clock struck 4 p.m. Everyone there, stylists and customers alike, focused on the screen to hear what President Marcos had to say to the people. Now, there was some of the workers continued their business while some of the customers stayed to finish the sauna. Even though they're already done with their visit, there was a collective sigh of relief when they heard Marcos announce that there will be no more COVID-19 lockdowns, as well as for his push for full face-to-face classes.
Oo, mas malaki matutulong no kasi kumbaga yung mga tao hindi na mapipigilan para pumunta ng salon, tapos yung mga face-to-face na eskwelahan, mas matututo ang mga estudyante.
Many were pleased too with the recent focus on food prices. Amid recent increases, others were candid with their thoughts as the speech stretched beyond an hour. There was also quite a reaction when Marcos said he wants a law requiring the ROTC or military training for students and that part on nuclear energy. Still, some have noted that certain national issues were left out.
Sana lahat ng sinabi niya matupad niya lahat. Kasi dito kasi sa parlor kasi yan lagi ang mga usap-usapan na sana ang bigas bumaba, mga ganon. Sana yun nga matupad niya yung sabi niya na ganon. Sabi niya maging high-tech na daw.
Yung pinakaano ko nagustuhan ko yung ating sovereignty, territory natin kasi yon. So kailangan ma-preserve natin dahil Pilipino tayo. So atin yung bansa natin. Sa drugs, medyo, kasi ngayon talamak na yung drugs. So parang hindi niya natakel yung drugs. Marami kasi ako nakikita, talagang sobra na.
People also collectively nodded to the president's plan to keep and expand the Build, Build, Build program and to help farmers better. Back to you, Rico.
Melissa Lopez, thank you so much for that update live from Marikina City. Turning heads at Marcos's first sauna were stars and public officials in traditional Filipino wear. Style icon and Senator Chis Escudero's wife, Heart Evangelista, Dawn Pinoy designer Mark Baumgartner's take on a modern-day Filipina. Senator Rizon Tiveros also wore a modern rendition of the Filipiniana with Joel Acebuche's piece made of Aklan piña fiber. She wore this with a hand-woven pigok bag from Samar and Marikina-made pumps. And here's Paul Soriano, director of Mr. Marcos's State of the Nation address, in a classy black barong. Going to her ading or sibling's first sauna, Senator Amy Marcos flaunted a Jan Garcia gown with a standout puffy sleeves and beaded detail. But this year's State of the Nation address marks the return of fancier clothing, including long gowns. Former President Duterte assigned a simple business attire dress code for his sauna events. Well, this has been a special edition of Newsnight on President Marcos Jr.'s first State of the Nation address. Catch the replay of the State of the Nation address at 7:30 tonight. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again on The Final Word at 9 in the evening. I'm Rico Hizon, and we'll leave you now with sights and sounds from today's event.
The President of the Republic of the Philippines, His Excellency Ferdinand Romualdez Marcos Jr.
The economy is expected to grow by 6.5 to 7.5%. We will first and foremost make basic developments. Children now need connectivity to the internet. Gagawin nating simple ang proseso ng paghingi at pagparating ng tulong. Dahil hindi naman dapat dinadagdagan pa ang hirap ng nararanasan ng ating mga mamamayan. Dapat natin balansehin ng maayos ang kalusugan at kapakanan ng ating mga mamamayan sa isang banda at ang ekonomiya naman sa kabilang banda. We will endure. Let our Filipino spirit ever remain undimmed.
RPN Radio Philippines Network, Radyo Ronda, DXKS Surigao, member kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
Ang Riverside Parts Master Incorporated na sa ilang bagong location sa Dalan, Burgos ning atong syudad. Mahimo niyong tawagan sa telephone number 231-7478 or 826-3663. Mga produkto nga inyong mapalit, genuine, Makita Power Tools sama sa planer, drill, grinder, Triton paints, construction supplies, angle bars, flat bars, GI pipes, automotive spare parts, Firefly electrical devices sama sa switches, bulbs ug outlets. Adto ang Riverside Parts Master Incorporated sa ilang bagong pwesto sa Dalan, Burgos ning syudad. Makahangyo ka o makabarato pagyod diha sa Riverside Parts Master Incorporated.
Aniya na ang food supplement nga kumpleto, sakto o aprobado. Ang Calabo Plus Herbal Capsule. Calabo Plus Herbal Capsule. Maayo alang sa pag-maintain sa inyong maayong panglawas, kahimsog o kapiskay sa mga pamati. Calabo Plus Herbal Capsule. Pakusog sa enerhiya o stamina. Mupalikon sa imong immune system. Calabo Plus Herbal Capsule. Andam sa pagpakligbatok sa mga nagkadaiyang balatian. Gusto lay pabaka sa uban, diri na kita sa kasaligan. Calabo Plus Herbal Capsule. Calabo Plus Herbal Capsule. A quality product of Jesser Marketing. Palit na karon sa mga butika.
EXL Makabuhay Plus Dietary Supplement. Nakakatulong iwasan ang iba't ibang uri ng sakit tulad ng diabetes, arthritis, rheumatism, hypertension, cancer, urinary tract infections o UTI, respiratory tract infections tulad ng ubo, sipon, lagnat, heart attack, constipation, fatigue, kidney, lung problem, premature aging, memory loss at depression. EXL Makabuhay Plus Dietary Supplement. Buhay at makulay ang buhay sa EXL Makabuhay.
EXL Makabuhay Plus Dietary Supplement. Mapalit sa pinakadool nga butika o drugstore sa inyong lugar.
RPN Radio Philippines Network. Radyo Ronda DXKS Surigao. Member, kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
When going about our daily lives, we don't know when a life-threatening event might suddenly happen, which is why knowing cardiopulmonary resuscitation or CPR as well as basic first aid is very handy when a situation calls for it. On the episode today, we'll discuss why CPR and other first aid practices should be a necessary skill for everyone to learn. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez and welcome to MedTalk Health Talk, only on CNN Philippines. Knowing CPR can be the difference between life and death when the situation arises. Our guests are here today to explain more. With us is Dr. Camille Santa Cruz. She's an emergency medicine specialist from the Asian Hospital and Medical Center. We're also joined by Dr. Don Robespierre Reyes, who is a cardiologist from Alabang Medical Center and UST Hospital. Cardiopulmonary resuscitation, or CPR, is widely used in the medical world and in all practices around the world, and that's for good reason. But this practice shouldn't be limited to only there, not just for those with medical background or medical practitioners. Because in the event that someone collapses or becomes unconscious, time will be of the essence and you will need to act quickly in order to assess the situation. Now, in these instances, assessing the situation is of utmost importance. So I'll start with that notion with CAMS. Dr. Camille, when a situation like that happens, how important is that time when someone is left unconscious or when someone needs help and when someone acts in order to help that person?
Time is of the essence. So knowing actually what to do and not panicking saves you a lot of time. So first off, you have to make sure that the scene is safe for you before you approach, no? Kasi what if the person that you see collapse, no? He might have suffered from a heart attack or he might have been, poisoned. You don't know. So first off, assess if the scene is safe before approaching. Next, of course, you have to check if he is responsive. So you have to call his name or you have to, touch him. Now ask, are you okay? If he does not respond, check if he is breathing. It's important at this point to call for help because it's a dire situation, no? It's an emergency, obviously, and you need a team with you. So kahit sino siguro na malapit, ask for help, no? They can contribute by calling the emergency numbers for you while you assess the person breathe, if he is breathing, if he has a pulse, ganyan. If you don't have any background about, anything medical, you can actually position the patient sideways so that the airway remains open. So that will help.
Now, Don, I'd like to ask you first, when it comes to CPR, what are we trying to achieve here? What is the actual act of CPR trying to achieve? What has happened to the person? Why they need CPR?
So when a person goes into cardiac arrest, what practically happens is the heart stops beating. When the heart stops beating, of course, the circulation to the different parts of the body, the brain in particular, stops too. So the act of doing your chest compressions and giving your airways, like giving the breaths, can actually make the heart pump again and provide oxygen that is much needed for the whole body to function again, the brain in particular.
It's very important that someone knows how to do it, but a lot of people might think that this CPR is something only for those in the medical field. Nurses, doctors are only the ones who should know this. Is that the case? Are only those with a medical background, are they only the one able to learn how to do CPR?
Actually, anyone can learn how to do CPR. We encourage lay people, non-medical people, especially if you have family members na merong hypertension, merong heart disease, kailangan kahit pa paano may isa sa pamilya na marunong mag-CPR.
But Cams, you mentioned also, aside from knowing CPR, basic first aid is also a good plus to have in that knowledge bank that people have. Now, basic first aid, you can actually treat simple things such as scratches and bruises. So let's start with that first. When it comes to basic wounds, nagalos lang, konting gasgas sa balat, let's talk about how to properly clean a wound.
When you sustain a wound, any injury attack, even burns, the first thing to do is to wash it with running water. Pinaka-importante pa rin ang clean water, yung sa banyo o kaya sa kusina, kasi yan yung mga common injuries that happen at home. Not necessarily may sugat ka agad, But, okay, if you have a wound, then make sure to wash it with soap and water. May konting hapde, pero it's actually the mechanical pressure that water provides. So open the tap in full so that certainly will clean the wound area to prevent infection.
Which is the proper way to treat a burn?
The goal is really to lower the temperature. So again, water. If there's no water available, I've read somewhere na especially if you were scalded with a hot liquid, coffee or whatever, or oil, mas mahirap yung mainit na langis, sa balat kasi matagal siya matanggal even with water. So, you apply, if you're in the kitchen, flour pwede para ma-absorb niya yung mainit na mantika and then rinse it off. After dropping the temperature, apply a little moisture. Kasi pagka napaso tayo, compromise na yung skin integrity, and moisture will help hasten the healing of skin.
Later on after the break, we'll talk about how to perform CPR, plus places where you can actually learn and be qualified to perform basic life support. All that and more when MedTalk Health Talk returns.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement. Gama sa Davao, para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement. Ato ni Bay.
Maayong balita sa tanan sa atong panginahanglan sa panimalay, mga gamit, ingon man mga dekorasyon, pwede na natong mapalit diha sa Wellington Bazaar. Anausab sa Wellington Bazaar ang mga bestidahon, karsunison, plain t-shirt, plastic chair, floor mat, mantel, banig, folding bed, habol, mosketero, trapal, lideret, basketball, stuffed toys ug mga dulaan sa bata. Ang Wellington Bazaar ana magalagad kanato sa Dalan Kaimo ning Dakbayan sa Surigao. Wellington Bazaar, gikan sa mga kawani og tigdumala sa Wellington Bazaar. Mayong adlaw alang kaninyo. Wellington Bazaar, sukion ta sa kanunay.
Uy, Day! Naunsa man ka, Day?
Day, kanang glisod na mo kakita, Day. Uy!
Sus, naunsa ba ka? Uy nga, katong ni aging bulan. Okay pa man ka? Naunsa di karon?
Laot siguro ni sisingunit aning cellphone kanang si computer, Day.
Da, mo lagi na akong ingon ba? Uy, Day, nakoy balita para sa imuha. Gamit og Lutein Plus, uy!
Lutein Plus?
Oo, tungod ang Lutein Plus, Day, duna kini 13 ka-ingredients. Hindi lang kini para sa mata, kundi sa imuhang tibuok lawas. Nga maka-assist pod sa imuhang anxiety o depression.
Ang Lutein Plus o sa ka-award-winning brand nga gikan pa sa New Zealand.
The award-winning supplements from Clean Green New Zealand Omega Plus support sa heart and blood system. Ang Lutein Plus ay 13 ka mga ingredients lakip ng vitamins A and C. Dili lamang kung maradyaw sa itong pananaw, nagsuporta sa binis sa ato interulawas ning panahon nga jari kita kuman sa COVID-19 pandemic. Kinahanglan magpabilin kitang himsog inom sa Lutein Plus, Omega Plus and Primrose Plus Soft Gel. Inintanan available sa New Family Drug, Palma Drug sa Aquarian Pharmacy.
Pagdalaga o gulitaw na gani, kinahanglan limpyo ug hamis kanunay ang kutis. Gamit og Karisma Kojic Soap. Karisma Kojic Soap, pampahamis, pampaputi ug pampabata sa panit. Karisma Kojic Soap. Karisma Kojic Soap. Mao kini ang tubag alang sa mga teenager nga gusto makaangkon og nindot nga kutis. Karisma Kojic Soap. Karisma Kojic Soap. Karisma Kojic Soap. Karisma Kojic Soap. Ang sikreto sa mga gwapa o gwapo. Karisma Kojic Soap. Mabalit sa inyong mga suking butika.
Mga Surigaonon, ana-anay maayong lugar na adtuan ang Interior Hub Home Furnishing Shop nga nahimutang sa Dalan Borromeo ning Dakbayan sa Surigao. Anaa kanila ang barato ng mga gamit para sa pagpagwapa sa inyong banyo, kusina o tibuok balay. Nagtanyag sila sa mga packages, sa faucet, wash basin o toilet bowl with complete fittings na swak sa inyong budget. Sa Interior Hub Home Furnishing Shop, daghan kay kapilian, mga bagong mga designs o dekalidad ang mga produkto. Interior Hub Home Furnishing Shop, Borromeo Street, Surigao City. Owned and managed by Earl Brian Palma. Contact number 0945 30-60-648.
EXL Makabuhay Plus Health and Wellness for God's Glory.
Nakay pasyente ma'am no mo isuon o sa gibati ato ma'am.
Ang gibati ato niya dok ikalihok yung mga lawas, ang ulo lang makalihok ang kamot dili wala na di nakadaw yung lawas bugab na nakaayo mandi maasa yang tiil. Makabuhay Plus lang jud tuloy ang sa Ginoo. Samtod nakalakaw na di siya dok. Primero ina niya pero higa na di ang pamati mga lihok na pagkatudis makakaon na siya makagulit na kasara. Makabuhay Plus lang jud kaloy ang sa Ginoo jud. Interesting ipaya na naman nakakita ni ani sa mumbalay na nagmuto na jud.
Sige pangalan nimo ma'am?
Charlene po, Dagatuloy.
Makabuhay! EXL Makabuhay Plus Dietary Supplement. Mapalit sa pinakadool nga butika o drugstore sa inyong lugar.
I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez and welcome back to MedTalk Health Talk. Now we're talking about CPR or the cardiopulmonary resuscitation, which can greatly increase the chance of a person who is unconscious where their circulation and their heart has stopped to actually live. Dr. Don, let's talk about this now, the important parts. As an overhead view, let's explain to our viewers how the CPR process happens. So I'll give you a scenario, Don. Family dinner, there's an occasion, a reunion, one of the family relatives, after eating a heavy meal, all of a sudden just slumps over and falls to the ground. What should someone who knows how to do CPR do next?
Check if the person is breathing, and if he's a trained individual, he has trained in BLS, then he has to check for pulse. The best place to look for the pulse is not really the wrist. It would be here at the carotid area. So the first instinct that the rescuer should do is to provide your chest compressions. All right, so the two hands, okay, should be put together on the chest. So that's going to be on the middle of the chest between the breasts, and that's where the breastbone is. So put the hand together this way and then make your chest compressions. Now, the number of chest compressions or how fast it is, it should be at the rate of 100 to 120 pumps a minute.
Let's talk about the chest compressions because this is a vital key when it comes to CPR. It has to be over the heart. When it comes to how strong someone should be able to do those chest compressions, because there are some instances where even children are successfully and efficiently able to learn CPR, meaning the limitations, of course, of a child who is probably 9 years old, even 5 years old, is the physical strength. When it comes to the actual chest compression, someone who is not trained with CPR may be fearful of injuring the person who is unconscious. When it comes to the amount of force needed in order for the circulation to start moving again, Don, could you give us an idea of how strong these chest compressions are?
That rescuer, that bystander should compress hard enough or deep enough to a depth of about 2 inches. So the rescuer or the responder should not be afraid of breaking some bone, because let's begin with the fact that the patient's already dead and the patient can no longer be any more dead. So if ever you hear some crack, just continue on compressing because if you don't do that, definitely the person will die.
Now, Don, when it comes to the consciousness of the person, earlier you said to check for pulse. Can CPR be done if someone is conscious?
So we don't really do your chest compressions on a person who has signs of life. That moaning or even saying some words, right, so that person's still alive, then you can say that the heart's still beating. But in any case that you're trained in detecting the pulse, if there is no pulse, but the patient is still gasping, like catching for some air, the usual that you see in the movies, like the patient's really running out of breath, and that can already be considered as cardiopulmonary arrest. So the very basic point here, you start compressions or your CPR on individuals whose pulse cannot be detected.
I'd like to talk to Cams here, going back to basic first aid for that matter. We talked about scratches, little burns, maybe at most second-degree burn. Now let's talk about bigger injuries, such as a cut from a knife or someone who's had their hand broken through glass. Glass, of course, has a deeper and cleaner cut, similar to that of a blade. When bleeding is involved here, Cams, what should be the thought process of someone who already knows basic first aid?
So first off, if someone sustains a cut and actively bleeding, apply pressure to stop the bleeding. If you are home, and you need at least a clean cloth, to help dress that wound. So aside from dressing the wound, you have to apply pressure. For some siguro who have experience joining Boy Scout or Girl Scout, yung nag-a-apply pa ng tourniquet, pwede yun. Although, not for long periods of time. Kasi if you tighten, like a rope, a string around an extremity that is bleeding, it will temporarily stop the bleeding. But at the same time, you might devitalize other structures there.
Now, I'd like to go back to Don. We were talking about CPR, and I was alluding on a device which is very critical. It's called the AED, or it's basically a defibrillator. Let's explain what a defibrillator is, because it gives a hefty amount of current, up to 3,000 volts of a shock to the person. Let's first start, anong relationship ng electricity sa tao?
So the heart is run by electricity. So without electricity, the heart won't be beating. But when a person dies, when a person goes into cardiac arrest, the electricity just goes down. But the heart goes into what we call electrical arrhythmia. So what is an arrhythmia? It's just like the heart going into convulsions, or nagpo-quiver siya. Okay, so alam mo yung nangingisay, and then the heart is rendered not effective in pumping blood kasi nangingisay lang siya. So the most common electrical short circuit, we can call that electrical short circuit, or what we call cardiac arrhythmia, is what we call the ventricular fibrillation. So the heart practically goes shivering or quivering like this one. And applying that, what we call that defibrillatory current, may nilalagay sa dibdib. Okay, so that's practically jolting the heart, and then hopefully with that jolting, the heart can regain a normal cardiac rhythm. So babalik yung normal na electrical current niya. Yung rhythm niya babalik.
These devices currently in all parts of the mall labeled AED. That is what it's for. But you have to definitely be trained and qualified to know how to use this device before you actually do this. That is what the training classes are for, which we will be discussing right after the break. How can you learn CPR, basic life support, as well as basic first aid? All that when Med Talk Health Talk returns.
Sa gayang ampingan ng pabaskugon, mao ka lang ang said marketing. Magadalit ka na to nining pinasahing tulumanon. Aniya na karon ang Takna sa Kahimso. Takna sa Kahimso. Pinasikaran kini sa Kogon Herbal Capsule. Takna sa Kahimso.
Higala, kumusta ba yung adlaw karatong tanan? Welcome diri sa inyong tulumanon, atong tulumanon ng Takna sa Kahimsog. Karong adlaw mga igsuon, mga ginikanan sa nato ang pipila ka mga sugilanon sa ato ang mga igsuon nga natabangan nining ato ang produkto, ang Kogon Herbal Capsule. Aron usab nga masayod kita kung paon sa ilikaya nga atong kaugalingon, labi na karong mga panahon na nga grabe na kayo ang sakit sa ato ang palibot. Now, sickness, disease is just around the corner. Ay nako gyud. No, grabe kayo ang ato ang palibot na karong mga panahon na grabe ng sakit-sakit ang balatian. Pero niya ato mga kaigsunan nga natabangan sa Kugon Herbal Capsule. Unahon nato si Ma'am Conchita Adlawan, no? Ang suliran ining si Ma'am Conchita Adlawan, dili kuno maayo ang iyang pag-ihi-ihi unya grabing kahago sa trabaho. Dugay-dugay po siya nagserbisyo kang Konsyal Emmanuel Galicia sa dihang buhi pa siya sa kalibutan. Pero nitaliwa na kini si Konsyal Emmanuel Galicia, pero kining si Ma'am Conchita Adlawan, doon na siya depensa, doon na siya kaagapay, doon na siya kapartner sa dihang siya ang doon na siya bation. Kaya di naman po ni bata ni si Ma'am Conchita, no? Sa 69 anyos ang edad, ato ang pamation kung unsa ang iyahang diskarte. Hello, nasi Nang Conchita, na si Mr. Kugon. Si paano na to?
Si Conchita Adlawan.
Pila edad?
69.
Asa ka na po yun?
Sarpa. Sarpa Village.
Sarpa Village.
Katalunan Grande.
Nang nag-ingon sa mua, nakapaambit sa mua nga nagagamit ko ka ni ining Kugon Herbal Capsule. Kanya, unsa na yung imuhang trabaho buluhaton sa nung nigamit ka ni Kugon Herbal Capsule?
Ay, katong sa una kang Galicia pa ko, kanang caregiver ko ni Sir Galicia, katong counselor. Si Emmanuel Galicia. Oh. Nya na katong buhi pa siya, nag-unom ko ka tuig ng trabaho. Puli-puli mi ni Janjan.
Ano trabaho ninyo?
Bantay ni Sir Galicia.
Noon sa naman
Counselor.
kayo na?
May pa to siya, nag-higda, niya, kanang bangunon, niya, bantayan na mo to mong trabaho, niya, ang kusog. Nagamit man gyud.
Kay paunsa mo natabangan aning Kugon Herbal Capsule, madam?
Mayo ni siya, kay dili ni siya tambal nga sa food supplement ni siya, no? Niya, maayo pod ni siya sa mga iihi, o kanang UTI ba, mga inana, maayo ni siya kaning Kugon Capsule, kaning herbal. Mao ni siya, dili ni siya tambal, pero pag ihi nimo, ganahan kag ihi ani nga kuan.
Kapila ka nag-inom aning Kugon Herbal Capsule? Pila na pod ka kabulan nag-inom ana?
Maduha pa.
Duha ka bulan. Kapila sa sakadlaw ka mo inom?
Kaduhara, unta gabi.
Nya kumusta man mo mo feeling sa imong lawas?
Maayo man, maayo kay makaihi man jud kag maayo imong kuan ba?
May pagpahuway.
Pagpahuway.
Ma'am, kung sa ikasulti niyo mo dyan sa ato ang mga siningan na ato mga naminaw karon, no? Libuan ang mga naminaw karon sa mga sama nimo nga doon na po yung mga trabaho nga bukat o kanang napo sila yung kondisyon nga aside pa sila kidney.
Ay kaning Kugon Herbal Capsule, dili ni siya ingon nga tambal, pero makalagsik sa atoa kay maayo ang atong pag-ihi, unya di ta maluya. Aptik yun ta ba? Dili kay ingana nga wala kay giinom. Pag inom pa na ko aning Kugon Capsule, kani siya nga capsule, maayo ang akong pag-ihi, unya aptik karon nagguna pa ko sa uma, nag-garden. Basta kay asa akong giingon nga aptik yun ang tao nga maggamit ani kani nga produkto.
Tinuod mga igsuon, mga ginikanan ang pagsaysay ni Ma'am Conchita Adlawan nga natabangan sa atong produkto ang Kugon Herbal Capsule. Bisan pa man siya og senior citizen na, iyang giampingan senior citizen na usab, no, nga si kanhing Konsyal Emmanuel Galicia, pero natabangan gyud siya tungod kay gipahimsog ang iyang panlawas sa atong produkto nga Kugon Herbal Capsule, mga igsoon, labi na sa iyang suliran sa pag-ihi-ihi. Wala kita igong oras, mga igsoon, mga ginikanan, manginaot kami nga kami nakatagtampo sa inyong pagpaminaw karong adlaw. Timan ininyo mga igsoon, pasta Kugon, lawas mo bas Kugon. Nagasalamat, mayong adlaw kanatong tanan.
Inyo nabati ang tulumanon, takna sa kahimsog. Usa ka tulumanon sa SED Marketing, pinasikaran sa Kugon Herbal Capsule, ang kapsula nga makatabang sa pag-alim sa mga balatian. Basta Kugon, lawas mo bas Kugon. Daghang salamat sa inyong pagpaminaw.
I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez and welcome back to Med Talk Health Talk. We've been discussing the importance of CPR as well as various first aid practices that can alleviate the condition of a patient and change the situation from dire to some with hope. You don't have to be a healthcare professional or have background in medicine to know basic life support as well as basic first aid. Now, with the number of complications that exists, it's highly recommended that we equip ourselves with the knowledge of how to do CPR as well as the proper techniques for basic first aid so that we can help someone, a loved one or a stranger in an emergency and even maybe save their life. Now, Cams, talking about the knowledge of how to do this competently, effectively, what is a first step for someone who is watching this and is interested to learn more?
There are organizations that train lay people. We have some, like in Makati, early intervention management. We have Academy of Emergency Sciences. All these institutions have Facebook pages. Just get on and, search for them. Sa local government, we have Philippine Red Cross, Philippine Heart Center. These are institutions that are, they train lay people to do CPR and how to use an automated external defibrillator. Most of the AEDs naman are dummy-proof. So you just have two buttons there, the power button and the shock button, and then the pads that you use have illustrations showing you where to actually put them on the chest. So, and yun nga, dalawa lang instruction sa paggamit ng automated external defibrillator.
I'm trying to look over some of the main reasons why a lot of people are intimidated with the knowledge of basic life support as well as first aid. And one of them is that what you mentioned, the fear of doing the wrong thing in case of an emergency. Another one is the misconceptions about the cost of these. Now, we have to reiterate here that this form of knowledge is a form of investment here. But when it comes to cost, are we talking about, like a really high and expensive training session here?
If I may give a range, ang training would cost someone probably around 2,500, from 1,500 to 2,500 pesos. Although we understand everything jacked up because of the pandemic, because of use of PPEs, etc. Pero if you, of course, these organizations that train lay people also consider all these protocols and also consider yung costing nila. I'm sure it's not going to be that expensive.
Dawn, I'd like to ask, another misconception or hesitation that people might have is that they don't have enough time to learn basic life support or attend these classes. In terms of time frame, what is the time frame in order for someone to be actually trained and certified for basic life support?
Because of the pandemic, of course, the training has changed from pre-pandemic that we did it face-to-face. But now the PHA, on our end in particular, we have shifted to a hybrid type of training. So they get the lectures over the internet. So the lectures are access to internet. So it's on demand. So they're given about 1 week to access all the lectures. And then after going through all the video lectures on the net, then they go through a face-to-face, limited, of course, following your minimum health protocols to avoid, of course, COVID. And that's going to last for half a day lang.
Now, before we end the show, I'm sure a lot of viewers here are now interested in how they can save a life. Dr. Cams, do you have any advice for our viewers out here when it comes to basic life support and basic first aid?
So when it comes to first aid, basic first aid and basic life support, it's important, for each and every family household to at least have one person trained. Kasi, like I said early on, it's not only investing for yourself, for your family, but also for your community. Know yung local numbers ng yung emergency hotline ng locality ninyo, like yung nearest na clinic, like I said, or nearest na hospital, para meron kayong tatawagan in case something happens at home.
Now, Dawn, how about you? Any advice for the viewers before we go?
You don't really need to be a healthcare worker in order for you to learn CPR. Kahit sino pwede, because you can save a life anytime, anywhere. The AED, we have discussed about the AED, the automated external defibrillator. If we add that to our basic CPR, it can really increase the survival rates to about 30%. Now, in the country, we only have a few AEDs deployed in public places. Even in our own airports, we only have a few. kung meron man. And we would like to urge to call on our government officials to please deploy more.
And with that, I'd like to thank Dr. Camille Santa Cruz and Dr. Don Robespierre Reyes for joining us in this episode, and very enlightening, and hopefully we inspired a lot of viewers out there to take that investment and learn basic life support as well as basic first aid. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and thank you for watching MedTalk Health Talk. We'll see you again next time.